continue with the Makerspace lesson. On day 3, students were developing their procedure, their detailed procedure, and their data table that they're going to place their data on when they conduct the lab. So on days 4 and 5, that's when the students are actually going to carry out the lab, collect data, and graph their results. And it's important to relate to students that this is a working document. If you wrote down something previously and let's just say the next day you didn't have to do that step, or you added a step, or you add more detail, then that's fine. They're constantly reflecting on what they placed, 10 minutes ago from the day before, and they're revising it over and over and over again to come up with this final product. So the students are continuously reflecting and revising their work throughout this whole process. And then on day 6, that's when they're going to construct their analysis of their results, like what did they find out, and their conclusion on whether their device was effective or not. And to convince the adventurers to choose their device, they need to have evidence, they need to have data. Just like with anything, even when you watch TV and see an infomercial, you want to make sure that there's some sort of data to support their claims. Like, you have to back it up with your data. So that's what they're doing. They're going to construct a conclusion, or even sort of a persuasive essay about why their device is effective. Just to give you a snapshot of what the Google Doc would look like, I created something in an applied technology course, and I've actually used the same setup for multiple lessons that I have, so students kind of get used to the setup of it. This is just a snapshot of like a data table page. So each portion up at the top here is a different tab, and this one just happens to be on the data table tab. And each group has their own page that they're going to create their data table. And I also like that it's done on a Google Doc, because if I see that students are struggling, not only can I make comments, but I can embed YouTube videos or articles that I think might be helpful for what they're doing, especially since each group is kind of on their own path. I can embed resources for them that's specific to their group and not just the whole class in general. So that's another reason why I really like using Google Docs to complete assignments. I think it's also important to mention that the teacher should be continuously walking around, chatting with kids, making sure that they're on the right track, adding support, but also if they fail in the construction of their design, because then they just go back and fix it. So failure is kind of part of the process of designing and developing a device and going throughout the scientific process. So even though as a teacher, you want them to get it right the first time, and you want them, to understand everything the first time, it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes learning is done through them failing and having to revise and do over and over and over again, which leads us to the assessment. So their grade's going to be comprised of a couple of different things, one being the Google Doc. So there's a rubric that's created for each portion of the Google Doc, because a brainstorming page wouldn't be the same amount of points as a conclusion page. So each one has a different set of criteria. Also, I like to have students take a survey at the end. They kind of grade themselves, but they also grade their group members in terms of their productivity, their contribution. Since everyone had a different role or were responsible for different pages, did that get done? And then also teacher observation, since the teacher will be wandering around the room from group to group, you kind of know who's on task and who's not. And finally, the self-regulated learning. I think that this lesson really plays into that, because students have goals at the very beginning. They have an assignment, they have a problem, they've reviewed their essential question, they have individual roles and responsibilities. So students setting goals to complete this task is part of that self-regulated learning. And also throughout the whole entire process, students are reflecting, making adaptations, making, changes to their devices so that it works. So it's a process of trial and error, all within the device itself and even within the lab procedure. So for them to have the mindset of creating goals, and if it doesn't work the first time, to go back and reflect and change things is just part of that self-regulated learning. And I think that's just as important as designing the device as it is to go through the process of learning how to do that. So that was my lesson on Makerspace. Again, just to recap on a couple of things, Makerspace is when students are given a problem or a situation that they're being asked to solve. And these problems are real life, they're authentic, they have meaning, and students are working together collaboratively to come up with these solutions. They're designing, they're being innovative, they're asking questions, they're trying things out, they're reflecting and revising. They're incorporating engineering, technology, science, math, language arts, for all of these things to kind of roll into this one Makerspace lesson. And this could possibly take longer than 6 days, just depending on where students are at, how fast they're moving. A lot of good discussions come from this. So this isn't something that can be done, in a day. This lesson would take probably over a week to complete. But it's good stuff. Students are learning how to learn and how to solve real life problems, which I think is extremely valuable. Thank you.